Hello, regular Drews.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode number 21.
On The Captive Witness, a Nancy Drew mystery story, number 64.
This one was actually requested by one of our patrons, Natalie. Thank you so much for recommending this one to us. Actually, we do have...
So good. So good.
It's a wild one. And actually, if you are interested in helping us choose one of our future episode topics, we have a brand new Patreon tier that anyone at the $3 level can help us vote periodically on some of our future episode titles.
Yes, so if you're interested in that, head on over to our Patreon at patreon.com/regular Nancy Drew. And you can subscribe at the gifted gumshoe level, which is the $3 level.
Yes.
Well, aren't you a regular Nancy Drew?
We sure hope so, and we hope you are too.
Join us as we talk Nancy Drew cover to cover and click to click.
Welcome to Regular Nancy Drew. Okay.
Do we want to talk about recent news first?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. Okay. Like a blaring alarm, breaking news. I feel like there should be some kind of sound effect or something, but I'll leave that up to your discussion.
We'll find one. We are actually recording this episode a few weeks in advance here, so you might have already heard the news by now, but just in case you haven't, Her Interactive has trademarked the term Mystery of the Seven Keys. Mm-hmm. We don't know why, but do you have any speculation as to why that might be?
I mean, honestly, I have just very mixed feelings about it. I would love to think that it's a trademark for a future game, and I'm sure that it is a trademark for some kind of future creation, probably a game, because that's what Her Interactive does. But it's just based on everything that's happened in the past and how long it took them to produce the last game and how close to not producing it that they were. Mm-hmm. I am not confident at all that it's a game that we would actually see come into fruition. So, so yeah, sure. I'm sure they trademarked it because they had an idea and were like, hey, let's start working on this. But as far as, if production of it will actually happen, I am skeptical.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, from what we learned of Kalina Herman, or a story retold on various platforms, Instagram, YouTube, whatever, she said that the naming process for the game does take place pretty late in the actual game development process. So hopefully, if they're trademarking something at this point, it means that they have an actual idea and hopefully even some progress on the game itself. I am hopeful that this is a game title and not some other project that they might be working on, or hopeful that it's a Nancy Drew game title and not something else that they're doing instead.
Yeah. I mean, I would say it does make sense to me that they would trademark it without Nancy Drew in the title, because I'm pretty sure Nancy Drew is a trademark of Simon & Schuster, so I don't think they can actually trademark anything with Nancy Drew in the title. Is that correct?
Right. Well, just the speculation is it could be something else, like they've done the like Odyssey and the Real Mist or whatever, so it could just be not a Nancy Drew game. And they haven't trademarked any of the other game titles in the past, and Nancy Drew isn't in the title of any of the other names. It's just the name of the series, right? Mm-hmm. So doesn't necessarily mean it's not, but it could be something out there. But
yeah, I would love it for it to happen, but I am not confident, and I'm not even hopeful.
Right. If it did come out, I'm not sure if it's even something we would enjoy. Like, I'm not confident it would be a good game, because if you ask me, Midnight in Salem was not a good game. It was not something that I really enjoyed. So even if it did come out, would we like it? Probably not.
I mean, I can guarantee you, though, that regardless of whatever it is, well, if it's another Nancy Drew game, not if it's like one of their other games that they helped produce, I probably wouldn't buy it. But if it's another Nancy Drew game, of course I'm going to buy it.
Oh, I'm going to buy it and play it.
I'm going to buy it and play it. But yeah, I mean, I would be hopeful that maybe they learned, something from their production of Midnight in Salem that would change maybe their trajectory, or maybe they, choosing to outsource to um, a different game production company or something. But I'm also not confident that it would be good, but you never know. You never know. You never know.
It's certainly not going to be Sea of Darkness, and prior to that same type of game, that same quality of game. It's going to be very different from anything that we've had in the past. If it even is a game title, because we don't know.
Who knows? But just something to keep your eyes on, regular Drews. Keep your eyes peeled and your ears perked up for any mention of Clue of the Seven Keys. Is that what it is?
Mystery of the Seven Keys.
Mystery of the Seven Keys. Mystery of the Seven Keys, yeah.
Which, if you notice, Mystery has never been in a game title before.
Yeah, that's weird. What could that mean?
Right. Also, Kalina Herman did hint that her interactive was going to make a big announcement in the fall. So this could be something coming soon. This could be something that's still years away, and she's referring to something else. So,
are we in the fall? Is this winter time now? Or
I would call it winter. It's cold out there. It's below 80, so I'm freezing all the time now.
60 degrees outside here right now. So
that's
winter. That's winter here in Texas. So
November or winter's from November to like mid-March, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway,
spring is for 6 minutes in April, and then it's summertime after that.
Yeah. And then there's one day of like apocalyptic snow weather. Yes. And then other than that, it's blistering.
It's 2020, and then it's a week.
No, yeah, then it's
negative 17 outside, and there's no water or power.
Oh my God. Anyway, yeah. We're here to talk about Captive Witness.
Yes. Should we say that we're doing a new format for our summary?
Okay. We're trying to tighten the reins up a little bit over here, because as much as we love to wax on philosophic about Nancy Drew for literally 4 hours, we realize it's true. It's really true. Yeah. We realize that maybe that's just a little bit too long to devote to a single podcast episode. So we are trying to tighten up our summaries over here. And so we are hoping to kind of cut that down a little bit, but we will see how successful we are.
I'll plug our Patreon of today. Here.
Yeah.
I'll plug our Patreon here again. We do talk a long time about each story that we read, and oftentimes that does lead to a lot of content that we really want to put in the episode, but it would just make the episode unreasonably long. So a lot of times we do have like deleted segments or even blooper segments that we want to share with you guys, and we actually do make those available on our Patreon. So if you do want a little bit more conversation about each mystery and even some funny stuff that we'll throw in there sometimes, that's at the $1 level. So if you want to go join our Patreon, some more content
for just $1 a month, you can get sometimes 5, sometimes 40 extra minutes of content, and I gotta say, super, super worth it. What else could you get at the dollar store that is such high value?
Right. Come on over. We've got a fun group already, and we'd love to have more of you.
Yeah. Alrighty. So do you want to talk about the cover of Captive Witness, Corey?
Yes, absolutely. And we do have 2 different versions here. I have the Wanderer edition.
And I have the Minstrel edition. So talk about yours, Corey.
So I think Wanderer was the original publisher of these books when it was published in 1981. And I don't think we mentioned this already. I'll say that this book was ghostwritten by Richard Ballard, and the cover for this one was illustrated, for the Wanderer edition, was illustrated by Ruth Sanderson with some internal illustrations that are also in this version, and those were done by Paul Frame. So I'm not sure what the decision was to have 2 different illustrators for the cover versus the internal illustrations, but the cover of this one is just an image of Nancy in a bright red ball gown she's not wearing a wig in this, but in the scene in the book, she's wearing a brown wig, and she's running from some guards, it looks like. They're not guards. They're running from our bad guys in the story.
Right.
We'll get to that scene later on.
But the thing is, though, because I was looking up covers on this online too, just to see all the different ones and everything. That's not actually what happens. Like, there is no scene where Nancy is running from them behind the theater. Like, she just goes into the water. Like,
she's certainly trying to hurry away, but they're not chasing her. She knows that they're there, but they don't see where she is, so they don't come after her at this. But I thought it was going to be a castle in the background. Mm-hmm. It is not. It is just a theater where she'd been performing, because she performs an opera in this one for no reason.
Oh my god. Yeah, that's gone on Nancy's list of skills, opera singing. Because of course she can sing opera, and why hadn't I even, thought to consider that before? I don't know. So honestly, I have issues with that cover of the book. And honestly, that's most of the covers of the book. Most of the covers of the book are Nancy in that red dress. Some of them she's featured in a wig, some of them she's not. But it's all mostly Nancy in that red dress. And it's just like, that's not a real scene in the book that happens. I know that she is in a red dress, at a certain point. But it seemed like just an excuse to put a pretty Nancy on the cover.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas, if you look at the minstrel book that I have, we have a much more badass cover of Nancy in the water with, inner tubes tied behind her, which we'll talk about later.
Yeah, it looks like yours is like just a few minutes after the scene from my cover. Yeah.
So she's in like this high-necked, full black wetsuit with like furtively looking over her shoulder. And in the background, there's a guard tower with a man with a gun, a rifle, and a crack of lightning. It's very intense. So at first I thought this was actually part of the illustration. It's not. That's just a sticker that's on the cover of my book.
Oh, I would have thought that that's like the moon or something.
I thought that's exactly what I thought it was too, but I just realized it's a yellow sticker.
Awesome.
So we get this badass version of Nancy on this one, which is actually reflective of something that does happen in the book. Mm-hmm. Instead of Nancy running through a field in a red dress, which never happens and is kind of sexist, in my opinion. So, boom. I'm voting. I'm speaking it out there. The minstrel version of this cover, 10 times better.
Mm-hmm. I do like that one better. This one's a lot more, I guess, like romanticizing this journey that she's trying to take everyone on. But
and also, this version of the book doesn't have interior illustrations. There's no illustrations in this version.
I read that they only did that for Wanderer.
Yeah, I'm very interested to hear about those if you want to talk about them, Corey.
They're all right. I mean, there's just a few of them. We have the image of when they find the real bus driver. We have one with, let's see, there's 6 of them total. When Nancy and Ned are in the amphibious car. Oh yeah, going off the side of the cliff.
Okay, those are pretty good. Yeah.
Very different style. Obviously, you can tell it's a different illustrator than the cover here, but yeah.
Interesting. Oh, I realized we didn't do our 3 words. My bad.
Oh, yeah.
It's so hard because this book is so all over the place.
The Cold War. Amphibious cars.
Tear gas. I don't know.
Tear gas. Orphans, refugees,
opera,
Vienna Film Festivals.
God, you can't describe it in 3 words. You cannot narrow it down to 3 words. Oh,
is this like a summer vacation trip? I don't know.
Cold War school trip.
Propaganda.
There we go. Cold War school trip propaganda. Oh man. Yeah.
I will also say that this book is supposedly the inspiration for the PC game The Captive Curse, which I don't see at all, other than being physically in Germany at some point in the book. The similarities in there.
The thing is, though, is that we are never in Germany in this book.
We are at the very, very beginning. They're in Munich. But then they leave I mean, that's the first chapter. We're in Germany, and that's it. So similarities start and end there. And yeah, if you've played the game, you'll not recognize a single piece of this story. And vice versa. If you've read this book but never played the game and you try to play the game, you will not recognize anything from the book.
Okay, I'm having some kind of dormant memory of Haunted Carousel, and you have to confirm that this is true or not, Corey. Is the guy who made the horses in Haunted Carousel called Kessler?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. That's actually one of my notes that I was going to say later. They missed a huge opportunity in the game to incorporate him into some sort of little, fan. What is it called?
I don't know.
Fan service when they put that Easter egg in to have a reference, a callback to previous games, because we do also have Bill Kessler in Icicle Creek, and Nancy asks him, any relation to Rolf Kessler, the guy that used to build the carousel horses around the turn of the century? And he's like, no idea who you're talking about. They should have had some Kessler in the game to draw another, they already had that established in the series, so that would have been good. But
oh, darn.
Squandered.
Yes. Okay, man. Wow.
Summary?
I guess so. I guess we will do our very best to try to describe to you the goings-on of this book, but I just have to warn you all that it is the craziest plot of any Nancy Drew book that I've ever read in my entire life.
It's certainly not a traditional mystery in any sense. In fact, I don't know that there is... there's mysterious elements, but there's no one central mystery besides... where did the film go? And we figured that out pretty early on. And then the rest of it's really just kind of like espionage missions that Nancy's trying to pull off.
Your face, just the look on your face really just, sums that all up nicely. Okay, so we will get into our summary. So we start our story with Nancy, Ned, Bess, George, Bert, and Dave on an Emerson-sponsored tour of Europe led by the professor at Emerson College, Raymond Bagley. While waiting in the airport in Munich for their bus tour, or for their tour bus, Nancy gets a telegram from Carson asking for her help. He says he has an interesting and urgent case about film stolen from a Vienna festival office and to call him as soon as she can.
While Nancy's reading this telegram, a airport porter comes over and insists on carrying some of Professor Bagsley's suitcases for him. And Professor's like, oh, no, that's okay. I got it. And he's like, no, I got this for you. And he snatches the bag and runs off with them. This massive chase soon ensues, and Nancy and all of her friends manage to recover the bags after Nancy does some, quite frankly, impressive acrobatic stunts. To get these bags back. I forget exactly what she says here, but she's like, drop the bags and I'll let you go. And he's like, you'll let me go, silly girl. But then he does. He drops the bag and he runs off. And he does escape, but they do get the bags back. But Nancy notices that the professor kind of acts a little casually about all of this. He's just like, oh, great, you got my bags back. Good, let's go, basically. So,
yeah. So they go ahead and get onto the tour bus where they meet Eric Nagy, an Emerson student who was born in River Heights, but whose parents are from Hungary. We also learned that a few months ago he was partially paralyzed in a car accident and now has to use a wheelchair pretty permanently. Mm-hmm. So on the drive, the group notices banging noise coming from the cargo compartment of the bus, and they go up to the driver and they're like, hey, we hear banging or whatever, and the driver's like, oh, it's just tools bouncing around, it's fine, whatever. They get off at a rest stop, but Nancy has to bend down to tie her shoe or something, and when she does so, she notices that the driver messing with the engine, take a part out of the engine and throw it into the bushes. And so the driver goes inside and he's like, oh, our bus is broken down. We're going to have to wait at least until tomorrow to get this new part delivered. Mm-hmm. And then at that exact moment, Nancy comes into the restaurant. She's like, you mean this part? And she, exposes his lie. Then, yes, there is indeed another chase scene where they chase down this bus driver, but he gets away by jumping into a black sedan. Nancy recognizes the driver of the sedan as the porter from the airport who had stolen Professor Bagley's bags.
At this point, Nancy asks the professor if there's something that maybe he's not telling her, because all of this is starting to fit together a little too strangely for her. And so he's like, all right, Nancy, I'll tell you everything. Let's go get some lunch so that we can talk privately about this. After they start eating, he reveals that he is a secret agent for the United States working with a refugee repatriation group trying to get orphans out of the what they call oppressed countries of Eastern Europe so that they could reunite them with their families that live in like the United States and Western Europe, like England and France. He's using this student tour he's using this tour as a cover so that he can get 10 children who are between the ages of 6 and 13. They're currently in Hungary in hiding, but they're trying to move them into Austria. And Eric is actually also assisting him with this plan because his 13-year-old cousin is one of those orphan children. Bagley reveals to Nancy that he actually wanted the porter from the airport to steal his suitcase because he had a document in there with false information about when and where the children were going to be crossing the border so that they could like throw the bad guys essentially off their trail and get away a little bit more easily with the children.
So at this point, it might be helpful for us to just remind y'all that this book was published in 1981.
Yes.
Which is, pre the fall of the Berlin Wall. The Iron Curtain is still a very real thing. And so that's kind of what this is about.
This book contains a lot of talk about propaganda, but I think in and of itself, it is kind of propaganda as well.
Yes. Okay. So they eventually get back on the bus. They find that the real bus driver tied up in the cargo compartment. Mm-hmm. And he's like, why didn't you notice I was banging around on there? And they were like, sorry.
We thought you were tools.
We thought you were tools. And he's very angry about that. But they move on and he drives them to Salzburg. Mm-hmm. He does have a weird rant about Mozart, which we'll have to talk about later. But they eventually get there and they find that their hotel is completely booked. It turns out that someone had called to cancel their reservation. And when they're there, a man named Herr Adolf Gutermann. Yes, you heard me correctly. Herr Adolf Gutermann. He overhears this and he offers to help them. He is super, super pushy about it and is like, I have this hotel. You must come with me. I have rooms for all of you. Because they're unable to find another hotel, they go ahead and accept his offer, where he does indeed have rooms waiting for them at another hotel. I for sure thought they were going to get jumped or something terrible was going to happen to all of them. But he does give them rooms at another hotel. So, okay.
And they do try at first to try to find another place to stay, but eventually they're just like, yes, let's accept this strange man's offer for free hotel rooms and not think anything into this, not think it's suspicious at all. Just, okay, thanks.
The clerk, because they're talking to the hotel clerk at the desk, and he says to go ahead and accept this guy's offer. Yeah. He's like, yeah, you better, you might as well.
You're not going to find anything else. Okay.
Are you telling me that someone at this hotel is telling this group of foreign students to go with this rando guy off the street who offered them rooms? Wow.
Seemingly for nothing in return. Red flag.
Red flag. Yep.
But they do. They get settled into this new hotel, and Nancy decides that she needs to finally call Carson to hear a little bit more about this stolen film from the film festival in Vienna. She goes to use one of the payphones in the lobby of the hotel, but they're all in use right now, so she goes across the street to use the payphone outside. And once she calls Carson, he tells her about this man named Kurt Kessler, who I believe he lives in River Heights now, but he is originally from Eastern Europe. And he has this film called The Captive Witness that is it's a documentary about human rights violations in his home country. He entered this film into the film festival, but it was stolen, and the photo developing lab who he'd given given the original copy to like make copies for the film festival, was actually burnt down. So the version that they were going to show was stolen, and now there's no way to recover the originals either. And then Carson thinks that government enemies likely stole this film from the festival, and they're going to want to trade it for something more valuable. We just don't know what that is. But he says that his contact there at the film festival is a man named Richard Ernst.
Mm-hmm. So the next morning, Nancy tells Bess and George that she is going to go to Vienna that day to investigate this missing or stolen film from the film festival office. And Herr Guterman overhears this again and convinces her to let him drive her there. Nancy sneakily asks Ned to join them. It is a very weird scene. Where Herr Guterman just lets him come along, but he seems upset by the fact that Ned came along.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, but as they start driving, yes, the red flags start flying, and Nancy realizes that this is the same sedan that she saw before, and it's just been recently painted to be a different color. Paint even actually comes off on her fingers when she goes to open the door handle of this car.
Sketchy.
So... And she also realizes that the chauffeur is the bag thief from the airport, and his name is Herr Berger. And so basically they realize that they're being kidnapped. Which, my question is it kidnapping if you willingly get in the car?
Well, they lock the doors, and
right,
Nancy realizes the only way to get out. Yeah. The doors only unlock from the outside, and also they have weird control over how much air goes into the back compartment where Ned and Nancy are.
It's very weird.
Super creepy, yeah.
No, it definitely is a kidnapping. I was just joking about the fact that Nancy knows that this guy is super sketchy, and she just gets into the car with him. She just is yeah, I can't find a rental car, so yeah, I'll go with you.
Doesn't know how sketchy he is quite yet. They're quite how sketchy he is yet, though. It gets way worse. Don't worry.
So they're driving along, and yes, it becomes clear that Herr Guterman has bad intentions, and he starts driving erratically to try to scare them. And they end up almost going over the side of the cliff, but the car stops right just in time, and so it's teetering on the edge of the cliff, and they have to do this very over the top feat to get them all to get them all out of the car safely, or just right the car, because Ned and Nancy actually don't end up getting out of the car.
Right.
So they continue on to, I guess, this cottage, which they call a shepherd's house, and they force Nancy inside, but they leave Ned in the car, and they're going to interrogate her about these missing children. But she is able to escape because Berger serves Guterman an iced coffee. And she grabs the coffee and throws it in Guterman's face, and is able to grab the keys from the side table, runs out the door and bars it so that they can't get away.
Yeah, the place is all the windows are barred down, and it only locks from the outside. So clearly he uses this place to interrogate people quite often, but works against him this time because Nancy's able to lock them inside and get back to the car.
Mm-hmm. So Nancy and Ned drive this car to get away, and they're going on all these back roads in case anyone is looking for them. And somehow they decide, or they discern, that this car is actually an amphibious car and can drive in the water.
It's chitty chitty bang bang.
I was talking about this with Lance because I was just so mind blown that this was something that's happened in a Nancy Drew book, and he got very uppity with me because he was like, amphibious cars are a real thing, Becky, and they existed as early as World War II or whatever. And I'm like, okay, I get it, I know that they exist and they're real, but really, come on. And the fact that she just has the sneaking suspicion that it is an amphibious car and just decides to test that theory by driving into the water.
Wouldn't it be funny if this car were amphibious? And then it is.
Anyway, it's an amphibious car. It floats. They deploy these flotation devices to float it down the river. Because I guess because they're using it on all these back roads, they get lost and they're trying to find like a town. And so they want to follow the water. And so they literally put the car in the water. Oh my God. Okay.
I thought that they were swimming. I thought that they'd left the car and then just started swimming from this point. And then it's like, Nancy, there's a waterfall coming. They're still in the car. I'm like, why are you swimming?
Yeah.
Anyway,
they are still in the car, and then a waterfall, actually they go through rapids first.
Oh, yeah.
But they survive the rapids fine, but then they're approaching a waterfall, and they have to, but there's nowhere to like drive the car out of the river. So they have to basically abandon the car. Yes. Oh, that's the rapid scene. That's the rapid scene you showed me. That's
just going straight down into it.
They have to abandon the car. It doesn't go over the waterfall. They like park it on the edge and are able to get out and climb up this embankment to get out. And they have to hike quite a ways, but they eventually find a bus stop and are able to get on the bus back towards Vienna. And when they're on the way back to Vienna, Herr Guterman and Herr Berger get on the bus, but they're able to like hide so that they don't see them. And they do eventually arrive at their hotel in Vienna.
Once they get there, Nancy turns on the news in her hotel room and they see that the car has been reported stolen. She does also call the professor to let him know that they made it safely, and he lets them know what they've been up to that day. They made several stops on their tour because they're still in Germany and they're planning to meet up with them like on, I think, Sunday or whatever, in a few days when the tour was going to get to Vienna anyway. While they were on one of their stops on the tour, Eric went to the bathroom and someone accidentally took his wheelchair and like thought it was their own and ended up swapping it. But it's weird, but they got it back. But then Nancy receives a threatening note under her door. The note is addressed to Nancy Drew, car thief, so we can assume that this is from Guterman. The note asks her to stop all of her attempts to kidnap these children and stop trying to find the missing film. So we do know now that somehow these two cases that she have are related. And the note also asks her to be alone in the lobby at 9 p.m. and promises that they will take her to see the film to prove that they have it, and they will return her unharmed. And at that point, they'll discuss what he really wants in exchange for the film. Wow. Wow.
Nancy can't figure out how Guterman knows that she's looking for this film, but she thinks that there might be a spy in the film festival office that overheard Ernst and Carson talking. So the next morning, she and Ned go to the film festival office to meet Richard Ernst and ask about this theft. They get to the office. Ernst tells them that a man came to the office and swapped the film canister with captive witness for an empty one and left with the film. And Nancy's able to inspect that canister that the thief left behind and sees an address label for a Viennese film company, which leads them to a sketchy building in a bad part of town. They do manage to get into this office building through a window, but before getting too far, a guard dog almost like comes up to them and almost attacks them. Mm-hmm. So they tear gas this dog because they happen to have tear gas, which we'll talk about. So they get out of the office building, they get back to their hotel, and that evening, Nancy does indeed follow the instructions on the note and meets with Herr Guterman alone without telling Ned. Mm-hmm. They blindfold her, at her request, by the way, not Herr Guterman's request, at Nancy's own request. They blindfold her, and they take her to screen part of Captive Witness. She does take note of what she hears, and she tries to note like how the car is turning to try to remember their route, but doesn't exactly remember, can't completely discern that from what she remembers. Mm-hmm. And after she watches parts of this film, Guterman says that he will actually let her take the children and the film as long as Kurt Kessler turns himself in. Mm-hmm. But they do return her to the hotel as promised. She calls Carson, who relays these terms to Kessler, who agrees to fly to Vienna the next day. So Nancy has until the day after tomorrow when he arrives to create a plan and try to find captive witness and get the children out of Hungary before Kessler arrives to prevent himself from having to turn himself over to this unknown government of unknown country.
Right. The next day, Nancy tells all of this to Ned, and they decide that they're going to try to kind of retrace not their steps, but their turns from the previous evening to try to figure out where exactly they took her. So they drove around the city looking for a location that matches some of the sounds that she heard, or some of the turns that they had to take, but they are unable to actually locate anything. So they decide to go back to the hotel, and this is when the rest of the tour arrives from their trip from Germany.
Yes. So at this point, they go out for coffee with the professor and Eric to kind of discuss these developments and this new stuff with Kessler. The professor tells them that he still hasn't gotten final instructions for the children's crossing into Austria, but a thief did finally take the bait that he planted with the fake border crossing instructions. But just like seconds later, after he's told this to Nancy, a man sitting behind them tells them not to turn around. He is going to deliver the final instructions to them for the plan for the children's crossing. But right as he is about to do so, he gasps and falls to the floor, suffering what the book describes as being a heart seizure. It's unclear if that's supposed to mean a heart attack or some kind of stroke. But Nancy, who has quote-unquote extensive training in first aid and paramedic techniques,
of course she does,
administers CPR to this guy, is able to revive him, and an ambulance comes to take him to the hospital. She goes with him, but doesn't stay for long because she realizes, after being on a call with the professor who told her that someone tried to steal Eric's wheelchair again, she realizes that the instructions for the children or some kind of important message must be hidden in the wheelchair because people keep trying to take it.
So she rushes back to the hotel at this point so that they can take apart the wheelchair, dismantle it to figure out where these instructions are, leaves the man at the hospital, and we never hear a thing about him again. So hopefully he lived. But it's at this point that Eric just magically stands up and reveals that he was never paralyzed at all, that this was all a ruse so that the bad guys wouldn't know that he can walk across the border or something. Not really clear.
It doesn't make any sense. I don't understand the reason for this at all. It was so upsetting. I'm sorry.
No.
It's like, at first when I read this, I was like, oh, are we getting our first glimpse at representation of people who aren't just able-bodied? And
right.
Are we finally getting some inclusion? No. Nope. It's just a ruse. It's just but for what purpose?
And it's not even that he reveals that, yes, sometimes he can walk. It's just, it's much better for him to use the wheelchair because it's an aid for him. No, not even a little bit.
He doesn't need it at all.
Yeah. Oh, anyway.
The way he explains it is that it is just a ruse so that people wouldn't consider him to be a threat, wouldn't take him seriously.
He's been doing this for months now. Months in preparation for bad guys possibly laying eyes on him at some point, because otherwise they would have no way to know.
I'm literally getting a headache just thinking about it.
I know.
Oh.
It feels ableist in the way that it is revealed, and it's real.
Oh yeah,
it's cringy. Yep,
it's very shitty.
But they do find the real instructions hidden in his wheelchair, so they dismantle that completely. And they find an envelope that has the real time and location of their crossing, as well as a map of the area. So the real plan is the children are supposed to move from Hungary, where they currently are, into Austria. But they want the bad guys to think that the children are actually currently in Czechoslovakia and are trying to move into Austria. So that they'll end up sending the bad guys to the wrong border crossing during all of their, whenever they put their plan into motion.
Right. So at this point, a man knocks on the door and asks for Professor Bagley. His name is Emil Popov, and he is one of the people posing as a parent to the children to be smuggled across the border. He tells them they are basically stranded in a shack near the border because two of the other couples who were traveling with them, also posing as parents, had been arrested. So now they don't have a functioning cover story to get these children across the border any longer. So Nancy, of course, being who she is, comes up with a plan. She directs her friends to find the oddest assortment of items, which we will maybe have to go through later. And
Yes, definitely.
they do go get those things, which includes like wigs and inner tubes and duck calls and like pipes and shit. I don't know.
Ball gown from the 1880s.
So she tells her friends that George is going to disguise herself as Nancy and go with Ned, Professor Bagley, Bert, who will be disguised as Eric, and Bess and Dave to the Czech border as the ruse. This is a fake plan for the bad guys. Mm-hmm. And she, dressed as an opera singer, and Eric, disguised as her chauffeur, will go to the Hungarian border to help the children cross by walking across a shallow lake. Because Nancy spent the afternoon looking at maps, and she realizes that a lake is close to where they are that they can use to walk the children across using like lashed together inner tubes, because it's also a very shallow lake, apparently.
How convenient.
Right. So before they'll do that, they go pick up Kessler from the airport. They leave him at the hotel. And then they all disperse to go enact this. But as Nancy and Eric leave, they realize they're being followed by Herr Guterman, despite their stellar disguises. They do manage to lose him momentarily by pouring oil on the road ahead of him and causing him to get into a car accident. Don't worry, he's fine, though, because later at the Opera House, after Nancy goes on stage to perform, because, yes, of course, she is actually going to perform in this opera, because why not? I mean, she has the costume and the wig.
And apparently plenty of time on her hands to do this.
And very conveniently, she was able to call one of her father's friends, who just happens to be living in Austria and happens to be a patron of this particular theater that happens to be built right by this shallow lake that happens to be abutting the border of Hungary, where these children are staying. So it's kismet for Nancy Drew. What can we say? Right. So when she's on stage performing this opera, she sees Herr Guterman in the audience. So y'all don't worry. It's fine. He survived his car crash that Nancy caused. So she rushes off the stage before the curtain call. And she and Eric get into the lake with all of their inner tubes and start walking across the lake to rescue the children.
It takes them about an hour to get to the other side of the lake, where they do meet the children. Eric reunites with his cousin, and they start getting all of these children slowly into the inner tubes so that they can help them cross across the lake again. As they're trying to get the last few children into their inner tubes, the Hungarian police do show up with their flashlights and start looking around to see exactly what's going on here. But luckily, Nancy and her group have already gotten into the water, and they're able to hide kind of amongst the reeds and work their way back across the bank of the lake.
It also does start to rain, which helps to hide them from the lights from the police. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, they successfully cross the lake and make it to land. The children are put into the limo and dried off, and they return to the hotel, where the children are met by Mr. Popov and the refugee organization.
Kurt Kessler is waiting at the hotel for them as well. Nancy, she's like, oh, good, you don't have to turn yourself over now because we were able to save the children. But I'm so sorry because I never was able to find a copy of your film. And this is the part where she reveals to everyone that Guterman did take her and let her see a part of this film. And he's like, wait, what do you mean you saw part of it? Where the film is? And she's like, yeah, well, I kind of remember the sounds of what was going on around me as we were traveling there, but I wasn't able to locate where this building actually was. And he says, oh, I've been to Austria before. Tell me about these sounds that you heard, and they'll help you try to zero in on exactly where we were or where you were. And he does. He's able to figure it out, and they hop in the car and drive around a little bit. And Nancy's like, yeah, I heard that sound. And they eventually do make it there. And yeah, they get to the building, pick the lock on the door, and find the actual room that they've been in before, where Herr Guterman is currently waiting for them with the film and a match.
Yeah, so he's holding the film in one hand and the lighter in the other, like he's about to burn it. But Kessler just goes over and just takes the film out of his hand, and he just lets him do that. So, okay. So we learn that Kessler and Guterman actually know each other. They used to be friends when they were both in the film industry together when they were young. Guterman apparently was like this master of disguise and changing his voice and everything, so that's why he's been taking on all these weird disguises throughout the course of this book. Guterman had lost his parents in a concentration camp and also made a documentary on political oppression, and was imprisoned for this. And in prison, he and Kessler were in prison together. I don't know if that's where they met, but they were in prison together.
I think they already knew each other, but yeah.
Yeah. But then he started making propaganda films for his country, either while he was imprisoned or after his release. And he also helped Kessler escape from prison. And then after he helped Kessler escape, his wife and children were killed, supposedly as a result of him assisting Kessler in his escape.
And I think when they catch him, that's when they start forcing him to do the propaganda films
right.
at that point. Yeah.
Right. So, yeah, that's really all that they explain, and we don't even really talk to Guterman or anything. This is all told from the perspective of Kessler. Guterman's just kind of sitting there like catatonic, I guess. I don't understand why, because he's shown quite a bit of agency throughout the rest of the book. It's just something now he's just literally like sitting in the chair.
Maybe he's just so surprised that they found him, or surprised to see Kessler again,
but he's
even though he was expecting to see. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess, I don't know. I guess I just thought that it was him holding the lighter and the film in one hand, waiting for them to show up so he could threaten to burn it. But maybe he was just in the process of about to burn it. I don't know.
That's what I read it as, but maybe he did anticipate them coming. I don't know.
Whatever. But they called the police, and supposedly Guterman is arrested. We don't actually know if he was or not, but they say that they called the police. And yeah. They flash forward to the film festival where everyone is, and they're all sitting in the audience, and Kurt Kessler wins producer of Best Foreign Documentary, and he invites Nancy on stage with him to help him accept the award, and that is the conclusion of Captive Witness.
There you go, folks.
Yeah. So,
okay.
I honestly, y'all, like, we had to condense so much in that summary that the craziness that was barely even really conveys the craziness of this book. I can honestly say that when I started this book, and throughout reading it, I never saw any of it coming.
Yeah.
It was a wild ride.
Yeah. Oh, geez.
Where do you want to start, Corey?
I guess some of the plot holes, maybe?
Right. Yes.
We started talking about this a little bit before we started filming or started recording, and we had to stop ourselves because we got too confused with what shouldn't have happened and what should have happened. And yeah.
Right. Yeah. So plot hole after plot hole, things just get dropped left and right. So there's a moment where Nancy's on a call with Carson, and she thinks she hears someone tapping the phone line. But Carson's like, well, it can't be on our end because we installed this fancy system where people can't tap phones at the Drew residence, which I don't know how that's a thing. But okay, because certainly you could tap anywhere at any point in the phone line.
Yeah.
You know, but whatever. So it can't be on their end. But then Nancy, after like the call is like dropped or disconnected or something, the professor comes up to Nancy and he's like, well, it can't have been, the phone couldn't have been tapped on this end either because all the phone lines are underground. Which, why does that mean they can't be tapped? I don't understand. I think
we're using a very old definition of phone tapping because what we are familiar with today is, didn't exist back then. So
surely so. But
something I'm missing here. Yeah.
But what I think, so I think, back in the day, quote unquote, back in the day, what they actually had to do was like physically tie in a wire to at some point on the phone line to be able to listen in, I think. But the thing is I don't know that that's true back then either. I think there were probably other ways of phone tapping back then too.
And even if the wires are underground, they got to come out of the ground at some place to get to the phone.
Right. But that's just mysteriously dropped. And also even later, Nancy makes a point as to say like, well, I don't know how Guterman could have known that we were also looking for the film, unless someone did tap the phone, but no one could have tapped the phone. But it's like, why do you believe that no one could have tapped the phone? Just because the professor told you that no one could have tapped the phone? Because Carson told you that no one could have tapped the phone? Nancy, on the phone, she's like, I hear someone tapping the phone. Carson's like, well, it's not over here. And the professor's like, well, it's not over here. And Nancy's just like, okay, what?
Yeah.
No.
It sounds like Carson got scammed a little bit, that he paid extra for an untappable phone. And how would the bad guys in Austria manage to tap a phone in River Heights? It's more likely that they tapped like Richard Ernst's phone when they were there stealing the film canister, right? And then they overheard Richard talking to Carson or talking to someone about having hired Nancy.
I truly don't get it. So that is just one example of a plot hole. But I think that the largest plot hole of all of this is, why is Nancy Drew the one responsible for helping repatriate a group of children from Eastern Europe to Western Europe?
Is it just because she's the most capable person on this tour and he clearly needs help because they went in with no plan whatsoever?
How is it that Professor Bagley, who is supposedly, okay, if you believe his story, supposedly done espionage work for the U.S. government in the past and is currently doing this espionage work for the U.S., he doesn't have any other contacts or government assistance, so he has to rely on a teenage detective.
Right.
To help him enact this espionage plan. Doesn't he have a handler? Or can he not call the Viennese government? Or surely there are other agents.
Presumably his handler is the guy in the hospital.
Oh, maybe. Oh, maybe. God. It's just such a mess. It's so bananas. It's so, I don't understand.
I could see how the propaganda film, or what they call a propaganda film, could sort of be related in a way to the child movement plan, but very loosely, just because we don't want the rest of the world seeing this documentary about human rights violations here, so we're going to stop the refugee plan. I don't know.
Like, see, that's another thing. I don't think that they are at all. I think it was just a convenient opportunity for Guterman to use, because he learned about it. He used it as leverage against Nancy. But the thing is, though, is I do not understand how or why Kessler in any circumstance would be like, yeah, I'll go back so that the orphans can come across. I understand that we're supposed to see it as this heroic gesture of he's sacrificing himself for these orphans or whatever. But what is going to stop them from doing the exact same thing in the future? You know what I mean?
Surely there's more than 10 orphans in all of Eastern Europe.
Right. This is not the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You don't have anything to do with this. they are just saying like, hey, turn Kessler over and we'll let you have these. It doesn't make any sense. Also,
not.
who the fuck? I'm sorry. Who is Herr Guterman?
I was about to say that. Who hired him to do this?
Yes, and why does he have the authority to bargain for 10 child citizens of whatever country this is for Kessler's life? Like, I don't get it. Don't get it?
Presumably he's German.
Presumably, right.
From his real name that we learn at the end, because he's using a fake name and still chooses the name Adolf, by the way. But from that and the name Adolf Guterman itself, it sounds like a very German name. So what does East Germany that they're in? I don't know what part of Germany that they're in, but at some point they make a distinction between parts. But what does that have to do with Hungarian children? Presumably Hungarian children.
We don't even know. I assume that the children are from the same country that Kessler is from, which if Kessler and Guterman know each other and Guterman is German, which we can assume Guterman is German, maybe, I don't know, then they're all German. But we just don't want to say Germany because because of unpleasant associations, and we don't want to be too heavy-handed in our own propaganda.
They were very heavy-handed.
I know. It's just ridiculous. It's really ridiculous.
And also, okay, I don't think we went too far into detail into this in the summary, but at one point Nancy realizes that after they've split up to go enact the plan, the professor and his group go to the Czech border and Nancy and Eric go the other direction. She realizes that they don't have or she doesn't know if the professor has a way to verify if these children are the same 10 children that they're looking for. And he does. It's fine. He has photographs of them and it does turn out to be fine, but she doesn't know for sure. And she's concerned that maybe Guterman will show up with 10 other random like, imposter children. And that's actually what does end up happening. He shows up with what they describe as children who are trained to lie about their identities.
What?
So the government, in an effort to stop 10 children from leaving the country and this film from leaving the country, they decide to offer up 10 trained children instead. So to keep 10 children, they're going to give up 10 others.
Is this a Red Sparrow situation?
What is going on?
I don't know.
Who are these children?
I don't know.
They're just going to send into the U.S.
Literally, it's so bananas. It's so extreme that I have no opportunity of justification or explanation, or only in the most far-fetched way that the book explains it. But like, there are things this book doesn't explain that like I can't explain.
Yes.
I don't get it.
And is this part of something larger? Because that quote-unquote shepherd's hut that they take Nancy to interrogate her, she remarks that, there are bars on the doors and windows. This must be a place where they bring people often to interrogate them. So is his whole job just to go around looking for people who are trying to get in on this, like, organization that moves children out of Eastern European countries?
Yeah, I mean, well, surely Guterman is some kind of big time spy is what we're supposed to understand, because he's got this really fancy car that is like airtight in the back and is amphibious, and he gets it repainted.
Oh my god.
He gets it repainted like every day or something, and he has this safe house where he can take people to torture them and all of this crap. But, like, it's just so strange to me, because I understand that that's what we're trying to get from this. But it makes no sense to me how if he is supposed to be a spy and he has all these things, he is the worst spy I think I have ever come across, like, in any spy novel or book or fiction. Like, you have to think, like, Nancy splashes iced coffee in his face and she gets away.
Yeah.
Like,
I like that they specify it was iced as well, so we don't
Yeah.
assume that they like scalded his
Scalded him in the
eyeballs.
face.
Just
like,
ice, don't worry.
He follows them all the time, and they just know that he's following them. They're like, oh, there's Guterman. Oh, I saw Guterman in the audience. He's here. It's like, is he trying to be sneaky, or is he just trying to be intimidating? And if he's trying to be intimidating, it's not working. Because, like, the whole thing about Ned and Nancy in the car, they, like, are being all sarcastic with him and being like, oh, no, Guterman, like, don't
kidnap us.
Or, like, yeah, it's so funny. And it's like, he's the most bumbling guy. And then later, he's sitting in the office with the film in one hand and the lighter in the other. And Kessler just, like, reaches out and takes it from him. He doesn't, like, they don't wrestle for it or anything. Kessler's just like, thanks. Takes it, and they call the cops, and he doesn't flee. Well, we don't know, but like, what?
If he is this like super spy, surely the government would just like not allow him to get arrested for something like stealing a film, something petty like that. They're going to protect him. So maybe they left out anything that happens to him because we're just supposed to assume that really there's nothing to arrest him for at this point, because it's all like not government sanctioned, but the government like asked him to do this.
Yeah, that's another thing. Though I don't understand how Nancy is in Austria and she knows about this operation to save the children, and then suddenly this guy Guterman comes in and starts basically effing up their plans along the way. Mm-hmm. How is it that she doesn't be like, ring ring Austrian government, hey, there's this guy who's probably a spy from behind the Iron Curtain that you might want to know about?
You think that'd be her first step, right?
You think that's step number one? Because then at the very least, you have whatever agency that's responsible for that in Austria going to investigate this guy and trip him up a little bit. But also then we have to talk about how at the very end, after they rescue the children, Eric has to go make a distraction so that they can get all the way across the lake.
Oh.
He goes to make a distraction and they make it across the lake, and then he comes over and the Austrian police had stopped him because he was whooping around, by the way.
Oh.
Whooping around like a quote unquote Indian, I think is what Nancy says. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's that bit of ugly racism, but also the Austrian police stop him and he tells them what they were doing, that they are working with this refugee organization and they're helping children cross the border. The Austrian police come over to where Nancy and the children are to investigate. They don't even talk to them. They just look at them and are like, yep, looks good. Carry on. And they leave.
Don't verify who these children are. Don't verify who Nancy and Eric are.
Yeah, don't verify that this is not some kind of trafficking ring where these citizens, not Viennese citizens, U.S. citizens in Vienna on a tour, bringing children from some unknown Eastern European country into this European country. I'm sorry, that doesn't raise any red flags for anyone. That's not these children are being trafficked, we should do something about this. That's not something illegal is happening. We should maybe call our boss at the very least and just check.
Right.
They're just
before we let all these people go.
No, looks good. Carry on. What the hell? I mean, getting a headache again.
It's okay. It's okay. And that's how Nancy overthrew the USSR.
Okay. I mean, so the craziness of the plot, the unrealistic nature of the plot aside, is there anything else you would like to talk about, Corey?
I'm sure there is. Let me scour my notes real quick here.
Oh, so at the very beginning, I was just reading the back of the book. And I was like, just from reading the back of the book, I have so many questions. And I wrote, Nancy versus East Germany.
That's basically what it is.
That's basically what it is. Ugh. Okay, it also says, okay, I'm just going to read the back of the book because maybe this will help us in our discussion. Is absent-minded Professor Bagley a spy on a secret mission? That's what he reveals to Nancy when he desperately needs her help during their student tour of Europe. Their tour leader is also the leader of an important plan to help 10 orphaned children escape from behind the Iron Curtain. But their hostile government will do just about anything, even kidnapping and murder, to keep the 10 children from crossing the border. Nancy comes up with a daring plan to help the kids, but it could leave her stranded behind the Iron Curtain in the hands of a very dangerous enemy. What murder?
There was no murder.
There's no murder.
Also, your description is a different one than what's on mine.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Read yours.
Murder. That's really weird. When trouble begins to plague a student tour through Europe, Nancy and her friends discover that their leader, Emerson College professor Raymond Bagley, is on a secret mission to transfer 10 refugee children from an Iron Curtain country to freedom. Before the mission is completed, Nancy receives an urgent message from her father concerning a missing entry in a foreign film festival. A series of adventures reveals that the theft was a crafty ploy of an enemy government to foil Dr. Bagley's plan. Undaunted and equally clever, Nancy pursues an intriguing clue found in an Emerson student's wheelchair and finds herself in great danger.
See, that's way more descriptive and better than the one on the back of this. This is no mention of the film at all. I mean, I don't know, man.
Yeah, definitely, like we were saying, definitely not a traditional mystery here. A lot more like spy, secret agent stuff than finding clues and following a trail and trying to smoke out the bad guy. We know who the bad guy is pretty early on in this, and it's just a matter of avoiding him, outsmarting him, and getting a step ahead of him to accomplish their mission, right?
Right. Yeah, and speaking back to what we were talking about at the beginning, I have absolutely no concept of how this could even possibly be related to Captive Curse, the PC game, except for the fact that they spend like the first chapter of the book in Germany. But it reminded me quite a bit of the Silent Spy because of all the spy espionage stuff and, the envelopes with secret instructions and kidnappings and crap. And so I was just like, well, I mean, it's not out of the ordinary for Nancy to be involved in spy stuff. It's super weird that it involves Eastern Europe, but but okay,
I did just replay that game just so that I'd be ready to talk about it in case we did have some overlap in the mystery and we wanted to discuss the game as well, but that's all right. I'm sure we'll have another episode where we can get into the game more specifically because it is just so different.
Yeah, we will have to really talk about that game at some point in the future because I do think it is a pretty strange game.
There's a lot to say about it. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. There is a lot to say about that game, so we'll have to do an episode of that one later.
Every time I replay it, it's just I get a different vibe from it.
It's baffling. Yeah. It's really confusing to me. I have a hard time following what's going on and like the justifications for things. Yeah. And I don't understand if that's because things are supposed to be left intentionally mysterious because it's supposed to be the spy thing, or if it's just because they do a bad job of explaining it. So
I think a little bit of both. I think maybe because it is one of their scarier games, they want to leave some stuff up to interpretation so that it's a little less
threat of murder so imminent.
Exactly. So maybe that's part of it.
But I'm sorry. Okay, this is totally off topic and we should totally edit this part out. But like the whole crap about like human oh god, like all their like experimenting with like human psychology and like I don't even remember how they phrase it in the game, but like because it's been a while since I've played it, but the illness and oh god, what is it called when you like human warfare or like what are you
trying to say?
It's on the tip of my tongue. Something warfare, not chemical warfare, but like when you pass on diseases instead.
Oh, biological warfare.
Biological warfare. There we go. All of that crap about biological warfare, like, and how like diseases spread and how.
Are you talking about the Silent Spy or the Captive Curse?
Silent Spy.
Oh, I thought we were talking about the Captive Curse.
Oh, okay. Well, there we go. That's the confusion.
Sorry about that.
Biological warfare and the Captive Curse.
Like, when do they have biological? Yeah, okay. That is definitely Silent Spy. I know what you're talking about now. Sorry about that.
Oh. Well, now I see what you're saying too. Yeah, about the scary part about the women and girls being attacked in the woods and stuff. But no,
they kind of leave that vague of what actually happened to them. I thought that that's what you're referring to, but yeah, they also leave it vague of like what exactly was the terrorist group trying to do. And
yeah, and the whole point that there's like this disease or illness that they're like infecting people when people are like dying. It's very dark, and yeah. Anyway, can we talk about Bess a little bit?
I wish she was in this book a little bit more because, I mean, she's on the trip with us, but she only has a few scenes where she gets to shine.
But, I mean, what scenes they are. One, I feel like we hit all of the high points about criticizing Bess and coming down on Bess's behavior because at the very beginning of the book, Bess is missing with Dave. And Nancy's like, oh, they must have snuck off to some snack bar or something. Mm-hmm. So it's killing two birds with one stone. We've got Bess's obsession with food and Bess's obsession with boys because she and Dave are off canoodling somewhere over a plate of spaghetti or something. And Nancy's got to make a crack about it.
Let me find this quote because it is amazing the way that she phrases this. She's talking to George, your cousin, your pretty cousin with a weakness for food and her constant companion with a weakness for Bess. Blech. I mean, as he should, but the way that she phrased that was freaking weird.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, I take it all back. I mean, I am still Team Bess, but who's the team I am firmly in is Dave.
Oh, yeah.
Team Dave. Team Dave for supporting Bess. Team Dave for sticking with Bess instead of these stupid motherfuckers over in the rest of the tour group. Your friends, who gives a fuck? Go get your fucking German schnitzel with your girlfriend. You know what I mean?
He has his priorities in order, definitely.
For real. I will also say, though, that they did not use the term boyfriend in the beginning of this book. Even with Ned and Nancy, let me read it because it was also very particular and I made a note about it.
Their frequent dates or something like that.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Okay. The trip is being sponsored by Emerson College with her special friend, Ned Nickerson, attended along with two other freshmen who frequently dated Nancy's closest companions, Bess and George. So, yeah. Special friend and frequent dates of, no boyfriends to be found here. So I thought that was interesting too. Mm-hmm. But then also there's another crack comment at Bess later, which she defends herself from, which I was very proud of. Okay. So this is when Nancy tells them that Kessler has offered to surrender himself in exchange for these children. And George's eyes flashed fire. I'll fight them myself, she muttered evenly, referring to the bad guys who might try to stop them. And you bet, me too, Bess added. Everyone smiled at this unexpected sign of pugnacity from the unusually timid girl. And I'm like, unexpected sign of pugnacity, my ass.
Do we not remember Crumbling Wall when she jumped into the bad guy's car just on the off chance she might be able to help Nancy?
Or Shockwaves, which I know is later than this, but like when she is the only cogent one in a sea of oblivious teenagers. Or, like, all the other time, Bess is the angry. Bess gets irrationally angry all the time. Bess is supposed to be quick-tempered, too. Anyway, so Bess responds to that by saying, don't look at me that way. I'm an absolute terror when I get angry.
Hell yeah, Bess.
Hell yeah, Bess. Snaps for Bess. I mean, I cannot stand, it's like every single time, everybody is like, oh, shy Bess. But Bess carries way too many characteristics than can fit into one person. She's like the poster child for like labeling of girls, right?
Yeah.
She gets overweight. She gets like, obsessed about her weight. She gets obsessed about food. She gets boy crazy. She gets,
flirty.
She gets like silly about her career stuff, right? Like flighty, like she can't make up her mind, indecisive. She gets timid. Now she also gets angry. And she also, like, there's just so many labels that they try to stick on Bess. And like everybody does it. And I just don't understand how Nancy can fly through these books and we have to stick all of these labels on Bess. And George, who is also present in these books, she doesn't get like any labels. We leave her the fuck alone. Like it's just Bess.
Maybe sporty at best,
right?
You know? Or outdoorsy.
Bess gets lined up for all of these characteristics, and it's like, how is one person supposed to be able to carry all of these things for you? Like, I can't with it.
They stereotype her, and I think that this probably is just the way we treat a lot of women, or as a society, just treat women, because, I mean, as we've talked about, Bess and George are kind of supposed to represent either sides of this spectrum of what was allowed for women at the time, of Bess being this flirty, girly girl end, and George is at the other of, like, you know, super tomboy, athletic, outdoorsy, whatever. Well, you know, Bess is as close to that, like, stereotype of a woman as we can get, so what are we going to do to her? But what else do we do to women but label them and put them into a box or a category and say, this is how you behave because you are this way and this is what we expect of you.
Right. Ugh.
I know. Ugh. It's nasty.
It sucks. So yeah, I couldn't let a single book go by without our best watch. You know, I had to say something about it.
Yes. Well, we love Bess.
Okay. Oh, okay. We should talk a little bit about Ned and Nancy too. So obviously Ned and Nancy are two of our main characters who feature quite heavily in this book. Ned is often Nancy's like main sidekick throughout this. Actually, I think he's like her only sidekick throughout this, aside from Eric at the very end. So obviously there's a lot of relationship dynamics at play here. So yeah, very early on we established that Eric is attractive. Eric is very attractive, and he likes to flirt with Nancy, and Nancy will kind of flirt back, and Ned absolutely does not like this. He doesn't say anything too direct to Nancy about it, but she picks up on it, and he knows that she picks up on it. And so there's some subtext between them there. But I think the most interesting part about their relationship that's portrayed in this book is the same problems that we see across all of the books. And there's like a really great illustration of that at a certain point that I would like to read. Okay, so Nancy's gotten the note from Guterman about, come to the lobby alone and you'll be returned unharmed. And she goes for some unbelievable reason that she just believes him and decides not to tell anyone or make any kind of plan for her safety should it not go to plan. So she doesn't tell Ned about it. But the next day, after she has been returned safely against all odds by this guy, she does tell him about it. So this is what it says. When she saw Ned the next morning, she said nothing about Guterman's note or the invitation to meet him alone that night to see the documentary. It bothered her to keep it a secret from Ned, but she believed that the fate of the children and the film hinged on a risk that was solely hers, finding out what Guterman wanted. Okay, so I misspoke. So this is after she got the note, but before she actually goes to meet Guterman. But so she doesn't tell Ned that she got this note because she's worried about the fate of the children. So she's worried that Ned is going to fuck up this plan somehow. So one, she doesn't trust Ned, and she doesn't include him in her plans, her very dangerous plans. But then later, there's a point in the book somewhere where he says that, he didn't appreciate being like walked over like that, essentially. But still, he was her willing slave and he would do whatever it was she asked of him. So there we get Ned's issues of feeling like he's a doormat, but still going along with Nancy's plans. Like, why? This is their relationship problems encapsulated in a nutshell. Nancy doesn't trust Ned. Ned will not stand up for himself and just won't communicate that to Nancy. He just goes along and is surprised when Nancy continues to treat him the same way.
It's surprising how quickly these issues developed because just, I mean, what, 9 mystery stories ago was Crocodile Island when we had no problems like this. There was no communication issues, no misunderstandings, no choosing to keep anyone out of the loop just because it's easier at any point. Ned's just there and he's helpful. And then, of course, later in the files, which the files aren't even a thing yet at the point that this story was written, I believe. Right. So obviously we have all that relationship drama, but this is the first mystery story post number 56 that I've ever read. So I'm just a little surprised to see how much of it was already coming up at this point. Exactly.
Yeah. No, it's there. It's there. The subtext is there. And it makes you really want to go back and read. I know I've said this a million times. Read more of the mystery stories to see if I can see it there too. I think you can see it a little bit in Clue of the Diary even. Because, you know, we talk about the way Nancy kind of uses Ned. Like, she uses him quite cruelly a little bit. And Bess and George and her joke quite a bit about like, oh, well, Ned's so helpful. Ned's being so helpful. So lucky that you have this guy that you can just send on these errands for you. You know, like.
That she just met because that's when they actually meet. So they weren't even dating yet at that point.
So like Nancy is already treating Ned like a doormat from like day one. And Ned is just happy to do it, quote unquote, you know, except that he's really not.
Well, so not happy until now. We think he's happy back then, but we don't know.
Is Ned just like the chronic nice guy? Does he have nice guy syndrome or something? And then he comes around and is just like, oh, Nancy won't sleep with me, so I don't want to do all this stuff for her anymore. I've waited too long.
That explains so much. I think that you're onto something there.
It's like Ned, he can't break this, you know, persona of him being a nice guy because then he won't be a nice guy for Nancy to choose. But really, he's not a nice guy because he just wants Nancy for her goodies. Like,
dump him. Wow.
Get you a man who can do more, Nancy.
Not Eric either.
No, Eric's weird and creepy and kind of sexist too.
He's very sexist.
Yeah, his flirting with her is kind of gross.
Fake needing to use a wheelchair for no reason.
But
gross. Yeah, I know. Yeah, his flirting with her, he asks if she wants to hold hands as they dredge the bottom of the lake.
But I get so annoyed with Nancy too in her response to this kind of stuff. I understand that like it's very much a 1980s brand of feminism to not directly confront that kind of harassment because it's what it is. Yeah. But she doesn't say like, no, let's not hold hands. She says like, we can hold on to the, the inner tubes because they're lashed together. Right. Instead, I want Nancy to be like, no, sorry, I'm not going to hold your hand, or like, not interested in you, Eric, or just, something much more direct.
What's your business here? You know, I'm with Ned. Why do you wait until I'm away from him to try this? This is creepy.
But but I understand that that's because, and I understand that why women don't do that in general is because of threat of violence and because it may not be safe to do so, or because, you also don't have to, but it annoys me that Nancy, who is so direct in all her other dealings and as far as like executing her willpower, as far as like mysteries go, is coy and playful when it comes to like her romantic relationships. I don't appreciate it. I want Nancy to maintain her identity when she's in the face of men.
Right. And she's not acting that way, like you said, because she's like afraid he's going to do something or afraid he's going to decline to help if she says no or something like that.
Right.
Although that would have been a good point to put into the story. Like,
Nancy is alone with this guy who pretended to be in a wheelchair and now
is pretending to help her and letting his help hinge on whether or not she'll do this. Yeah.
Yuck. Oh, yuck. But no, honestly, that's what I thought was going to happen at some point in the book, because I was very suspicious of Professor Bagley.
Oh, yeah.
Especially when it came to the phone tapping thing, because it seemed like he was just trying to put her off. And he was just the way that things happened with Professor Bagley, I was very intrigued about. I was like, this doesn't seem straightforward, surface level, like he's telling her everything or that he's not lying to her, but he wasn't. So
we're just expected to believe that he's a secret agent that can't have, it doesn't have any capability of coming up with a simple plan on his own. Has to get a teenager to do it for him.
Yep. It's a mystery. That's the real mystery of the captive witness. It's not, how do we save these missing children? It's not where is the film Captive Witness. It is why can't a grown man who is supposedly a spy execute the mission without the help of an 18-year-old girl?
Mm-hmm. Oh, whenever they were saying that the other couples that were going to pose as being the children's parents who were arrested, I thought Nancy was going to disguise herself as a parent, and she and Eric were going to be a couple and be the parents, or she and Ned or something like that, or she and Ned, and then Bess and Dave and Bert and George would all pretend like they're married. And I'm like, oh gosh, they're going to have these 18-year-olds pretending like they're the parents of 13-year-olds, and it's going to be a disaster. But thankfully, it was more complex than that.
I mean,
unnecessarily so.
That,
but it was.
Oh my God.
Popoff didn't help at all. He stayed in the hotel, even though this was his mission. His wife did more work than he did.
Yeah, she was the one who had to stay with all the 10 children for days while he was gone. Yeah. Oh. So, do you want to give it a flashlight score, Corey?
I don't even know.
I don't know where to start.
It was so entertaining in that things were very, there's a lot of action, a lot of stuff going on constantly. So that is good in my book, but also the mystery itself didn't make a lot of sense. I'll give it a 3.
That's very generous of you, Corey.
Okay.
I agree. It's very hard to know how to gauge this because it's not okay. It's not that it wasn't fun to read, because I will say, if you're looking for a Nancy Drew book that will make you laugh out loud, that will make you laugh out loud, that will make you gasp and say what the fuck, out loud while you're reading, this is the first book that you need to read. The first Nancy Drew book that you need to read. But yeah, as far as quality, cogency,
lack of plot holes.
Right. I could not rate this any higher than a 2. Especially when I think about as it relates to overarching what a Nancy Drew book should be, what a Nancy Drew book is characterized by, what Nancy is characterized by. I feel like this really misses the mark on that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would give it a 2 out of 5 flashlights. I give it 2 just for the lulls alone, because it was certainly entertaining, as you said. So.
It is very much so. Alrighty, do we want to talk about our next one then?
Sure. So the next book that we will be covering is a Nancy Drew mystery story number 110, The Nutcracker Ballet Mystery. And this is the episode that is going to be released on Christmas Eve. Mm-hmm. So we thought we would do a special little Christmassy themed book for y'all.
Something a little festive.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, that was Captive Witness. I hope you enjoyed that little foray into this shenanigans in Eastern Europe. I don't know what else to say. Yeah. Thank you for listening, I guess. And we'll see you next time, Regular Drews.
We'll see you on the next one.
Thank you for listening to Regular Nancy Drew. Email us at regularnancydrew@gmail.com.
If you liked this episode, make sure to rate, review, and subscribe.
You can also follow us on Instagram at Regular Nancy Drew and Twitter at RegularND.
You can also support us on Patreon. Patrons at the $1 level receive early access to each episode as well as weekly bonus content.
And to all you Regular Drews out there,
thanks for listening.